We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And welcome back to another episode of the Golden Blog Podcast, the Bearcast. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Long. With me, my co-host, Andy Johnson. How are you feeling?
You almost said Andy J. Beast Mode, didn't you?
I did. I almost did say Andy J. Beast Mode.
Damn it.
Yeah, it was close. It was close. How are you, bud? What are we? This Sunday night? Sunday night, right?
Yeah, pretty good.
It feels like we had a long weekend because we didn't have football last night.
Feels like we had a bye week in a really weird way. I was like expecting Nick's column to go up today, and it wasn't there. I was like, what is happening?
Well, you also texted me, what was it, late last night or like yesterday? Was it yesterday morning where you texted me? And you were like, where's the recap?
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, there's no recap on the site. And I was like, the recap's up. And it's all because you forgot to click refresh on your browser.
Yeah. It was all left over from being at the game. So everything was like, it was like a time warp. But unfortunately, it wasn't far enough back. We'd still lost. So can't erase that.
Can't erase that one. But man, what a Friday night. That was it a special Friday night? I don't know how to describe what happened on Friday night, but Friday night nonetheless. Before we begin, do we have any housekeeping? I'm thinking off the top of my head. I don't think so. I guess we'll dive right into it. Friday night, number 15 California hosts Arizona State on a Friday night ESPN game. Cal loses 17-14. Chase Garbers plays about a half, right? You'd think that's about a half because Modster came in and played maybe one drive, I think, in the first half. So yeah, he played just about a half before he went down injured. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Garbers was 9 of 12 for 117 yards and 1 touchdown before his injury. Modster comes in for the rest of the game, throws 5 of 14 for 23 yards, 1 interception. Rushing wise, Chris Brown Jr. led the way with 18 rushes for 54 yards and a touchdown with a long of 13. Trayvon Clark led the way in yards with 68 yards on 4 receptions on 6 targets and a touchdown with also a long for 45 yards. Defensively, the Bears, of course, led by Evan Weaver, 15 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. Cam Good also making his return with 11 tackles, 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss, 1 QB hurry, and 1 forced fumble. Whew, what a stat line. And that's pretty much it. Andy, I need your initial thoughts about this game, and then we're going to go into some of our reader questions, which have a lot to do with this game, and then we'll go into our points that don't overlap with whatever we answered with the fan mail.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so Arizona State game. It was really interesting. I don't know. It's been a little bit of a weird day after for me. 2 day after, if you will.
How tired were you on Saturday morning?
Well, I played 5 sets of tennis, so I had to be up and at 'em. But I was pretty tired. I think that for me, I didn't walk away from this game being overly upset. And I sat there in the press conference staring Wilcox in the face, thinking that he was going to murder me for simply just sitting there.
He didn't make eye contact with you, though.
And then, that's fair. And then Evan Weaver came in, and I was like, guys, like, I think we need to take the people in the front row and move them to the back row. Let's give that man some space.
Let's just FaceTime this.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to do this in person.
Yeah, we can do these things remote. This is 2019. We don't have to be so close to each other. So, yeah, despite the reaction of the team, I thought it was really interesting. I was more upset, as everybody that listens to this podcast knows, after the North Texas game than I was after this game.
Just our like tone right now alone is significantly like higher and better than we were after the North Texas game, or after the Ole Miss game too.
I had this weird sense of relief after, and this is going to be really weird and probably an unpopular opinion, but all in all, I think so in the preview podcast, the one that got deleted, I spelled out what our schedule was going to be in regards to victories. And what I had said was that we're going to be 4-1 going into the Oregon game. I did not expect us to beat Washington. And then, so I didn't call that, but I did call everything else a win. And so, I mean, fine. Trade Washington for Arizona State. We're right where I expected to be with my, as Josh likes to say, Cloud 9 wins. So for me, we're not off of expectation. So it feels weird to think otherwise. And I think I say this a lot, is that expectations are a hell of a thing. And when you move to number 15, we get big stars in our eyes. And we're like, oh, we could be in the Rose Bowl, you know? And
the college football playoff.
Yeah. I was like, and then everyone's like, oh, Cal's like the last hope for the Pac-12 and the college football playoff. Like, first of all, no, they're not. It's way too early in the season. And so anyways, that's sort of like where I came out. I was like, this didn't really matter. We lost to a team that plays in the Pac-12 South. It's not as big of a loss as, let's say, maybe if we lost to Washington State in this way. It would have meant a lot more because it's later in the season. Right now, yeah, it hurts. It was a winnable football game, which is why I think you saw that anger from Wilcox. But I have a bunch of issues with kind of how we managed the second half and what our approach was and all that type of stuff. So there's bones to be picked. But I don't come away from this thinking we need to go and downgrade expectations. Yeah, season's over. Cal, this is just classic Cal. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. It's just too early.
I mean, it's the same as last year, right? You know, when we got to our 6th win last year, and immediately the thing I said on that first podcast after we got our 6th was, now we're playing with house money, right? That's kind of how I felt after we beat Ole Miss when we were 4-0. It's like we weren't expected to be 4-0, right? You're playing with house money going into the ASU and Oregon game. And we got a lot of flack for like the talk last week about like, you know, how do you get to a Pac-12 North championship and stuff. But I mean, I talked to the Oregon guys today on their podcast. If you want to listen to that, I think it'll go up on their site sometime this week. But you know, we talked about it at the end of that. The ASU loss isn't as big of a deal in the big picture as it is for this season, as if your expectation is still that we would compete for the Pac-12 North, this win isn't as bad as losing to Oregon. Like, if we lose to Oregon next week, that hope of like maybe we compete for the Pac-12 North goes straight out the door. Because the moment you lose an advantage over any of the top tier Pac-12 North schools, you don't give yourself a shot. So there was no path to getting to the Pac-12 North without beating Oregon. There was a path with us still losing to Washington, weirdly. But there is no path without us beating Oregon. So we need that to happen more so than us going back in time and beating Arizona State. So yeah, it's one of those. But I totally agree with you. There's a lot of issues that stemmed from this game that we do need to address and we do need to talk about. So, fan mail. This is where the like listeners create our content for us. So,
keep them coming.
We love it. Well, I mean, you already answered this one, but I'll start with this one. Josh sends us. It says, "Does Andy J. Beastmo still believe in Cloud 9 wins?"
Yeah. Well, okay. So I was thinking about this. My initial reaction was like, "Fuck yeah, I do." But then I was like, I believe I said I like downgraded my win expectation after North Texas, And then after Ole Miss, I was like, okay, well, garbage is good somehow. So
back to 9.
So I was like, maybe we'll go back to 9 now. So yeah, I mean, definitely. I honestly think Cloud 9 wins is achievable with losing to Oregon. I think it's very achievable. Let's paint my worst case scenario in the next 2 weeks is you lose to Oregon and you win against Oregon State. Like, I'm not even going to fathom the idea of an upset against Oregon State as even being in the realm of possibility. So we lose to Oregon, we have a bye week, and then we go to Oregon State.
We play them here.
Yeah, at home. And you're 5-2, right?
Yeah.
So you need 3 more wins on the rest of the schedule. Who's going to tell me that SC, Stanford, UCLA couldn't all 3 be wins? And then you throw in a Washington State team.
Which looks beatable now.
Yeah, it's beatable, and we play against air raids super well and have been played them tough. I mean, it's just like, and even Utah looks, there's cracks in the armor there. So you can't give me 3 of those 5? I would take 3 of those 5. Like, no problem.
If we're 5-2, like, I'm looking at the schedule, and you can't tell me that those 3 California school games don't look winnable. That alone gets you to 8.
Yeah.
Like, if you can get those 3. Like, I'm not saying that those are surefire wins, but there have been years where 2 out of those 3 games are not winnable. Like, with our current team, unwinnable games.
Sure, 3 years ago.
Yeah. But now those, and especially how well we've grown up and how far some of those teams have declined, especially this year, those 3 definitely look like, at the very least, coin toss games.
SC's in free fall, and they're like giving away football chances to play competitive football. Helton's going to get fired. They don't have an athletic director. The fan base is rooting for Harbaugh to come back to the West Coast. I mean, SC, and they're on their 3rd quarterback. They're like, and he seems like there's some positives there. So
He's
it's not
decent. He's not bad.
But for me to I can see the path to Cloud 9 wins. Like 8 wins regular season, bowl game. Which once again, if we did that, I would be super, super happy. But it's just so interesting about how it happens.
Yeah.
If we did beat Oregon and you do go to something where like you're looking at a 5-6-1 type scenario, and then you win 2 of those games, I guarantee you the tone of the rest of the season, because now let's say you lose against UCLA, maybe you lose Stanford, so you don't get the big game. You still got 8 wins, right? You got 2, so you got 2 more wins, but you also lost probably some other winnable games. I guarantee this, we're in the same spot where everyone's like, "Oh, we could have been better. We could have done more." And it's like, man, I got to just keep reminding myself, 8 wins. I said I would take it. I'm taking it. So yeah, anyways, I think I'm sticking to that train pretty hard here. And I think it will take a lot for me to come off of it. Like, there would have to be a seismic shift for me to come off of that, looking at like what's happened in the Pac-12. And luckily, like, that is the nice thing about playing on Friday, because then you had Saturday to kind of observe everything that happened in the Pac-12, and you're like, oh, okay, like, cool, we're in a pretty good spot, like
Saturday was great, just sitting there watching all those other Pac-12 schools like struggle and like just their games like turn into whatever the Pac-12 football is. And just sitting there laughing was just so much joy. Without the stress of like, watching us play. It was so much fun. and then side note is like watching Nebraska get pummeled by Ohio State, and Adrian Martinez having a negative quarterback rating was whoosh. Whoosh. All right. So that's a fun one to start off with. And then we have some questions about the game in particular. But then we have one comment which I'm going to read to you. He says, "Boys, I need some sunshine pumping. Make me feel better about the outlook of the rest of the season." I think we kind of just did that.
Yeah, was that enough right there?
I think that's enough right there.
Don't worry, we got this.
Yeah.
8 wins, minted, pressed, like, ship it. We're there.
All right, some questions about the game and some general stuff about leading into the immediate future of Cal football. So the first one, why was our defense so subpar against ASU? To what extent was it bad scheme versus bad execution? There was another question regarding that, and also, let me pull it up. Why were there so many blown coverages / wide open wide receivers during the ASU game? So if you don't mind, I'd like to answer this because I actually had this conversation with the Oregon guys today. Because one of the Oregon guys, I can't spell I don't know how to say his username or like his persona name. It's like Hiddleday. It's like it's supposed to be like they have that term of like all the day or something like that. Something. Anyways,
No idea.
he watches a lot of tape and breaks down and charts all the games. He watched the North Texas game, or no, sorry, the Washington game, the Ole Miss game, and then the ASU game, and he charted it. And we were talking about the DBs, and he asked me, he seems to look at he saw the comments and he sees like a lot of comments about how the DBs aren't performing particularly well this year. Like if I saw anything differently, or if I agree. He disagrees with most of what people are saying is that they're underperforming. My answer is kind of twofold. The first one is tackling across the board has been a very bad issue. Like we are not good at tackling this year for some odd godforsaken reason, and we just can't wrap guys up to like close out plays. And it always comes in like significant third down or significant moments. I don't know how you fix that, other than just drilling the tackling drills and like the form and the tackling angles, and you just hope that you just get into midseason form in a little bit. But the other thing is, all right, with my limited football knowledge of coaching and all that, the defense, if a quarterback's sitting in the pocket for let's say 8 seconds, right? You're expecting maybe the first 3 or 4 seconds is him surveying and him making a decision to pull the trigger or not. If he can't pull the trigger, what does that usually mean? It means one of two things. Either the offensive line is doing an amazing job of protection and it's deep ball plays that needs to be developed, or two, the secondary on the other team and the linebackers that have dropped into coverage have done an outstanding job of covering and he has nowhere to throw. We have no gauge of that because we can't see the all 22 angle. And especially in real live game, if you're sitting there like us in the press box or if you're in the stands, like you're naturally just gravitated to where the ball is. You're not looking at the whole field as, a whole. So let's say the guys do their job. That means within the next like 3 to 4 seconds, within that 8 clock span, you're expecting your defensive line to either crunch the pocket and sack him, force him out, and do something outside of that. We actually did that a lot against ASU, where we forced him out of the pocket collapsed, even though he was sitting there surveying, and then he would scramble. This leads to that second question of why were so many ASU guys open, right? The DBs actually, I think, did exactly what they were told. The pocket collapses, he scrambles, right? Scramble drills are the hardest thing to cover as a secondary because the play has broken down. Now you're just reacting to whatever the wide receiver does. The cornerbacks and the safeties decide to back off, not allow them to do that Aaron Rodgers thing where Aaron Rodgers scrambles, the wide receivers immediately know to whatever route they're doing, just run a go route. Just get past the secondary and he'll launch it over the top. Our secondaries did the exact opposite. They sat back, they kept all the wide receivers in front of them and made sure whenever Jaden Daniels decided to throw, they would be in a spot to be able to tackle them. So yes, the wide receivers are open down the sidelines, but you have to also account for how many of those were broken plays and how many of those accounted for big runs. Like, yeah, it might have gone 15 yards downfield, but if they had crashed down to try and stop Jaden Daniels from running, that could have ended up leading to like a 50-yard touchdown pass. So they're doing what they're told. And then the issue becomes our pass rush, because that means our defensive line and linebackers aren't getting to Jaden Daniels when the pocket collapses and he has nowhere to throw because the coverage is so great on the back end. So yeah, and it also leads to like the whole statistics thing, right? Like, why aren't we getting enough interceptions? If the guy's not throwing to our secondary, you can't make interceptions. Like, it's a reactionary based stat. Like, you can't get interceptions unless the ball is thrown in your direction. And if he has nowhere to throw and he's making these throws on the run on broken plays, yes, they might be open, but that also doesn't give those guys a chance to fully make interceptions unless one of two things happens. One, the quarterback makes a bad throw and a bad read, or two, you get a QB hurry or you hit him as he throws. And that's like a half sack in my opinion. So that's where I'm at with like the defense as a whole, and like people saying like the DBs aren't producing, they're not playing as well as they have. I honestly think they are, and they're just not getting the respect because you're not able to see the whole game. I might be totally wrong because I'm not looking at the all 22 broadcast, but
that's what I would have said.
Yeah.
But I think you nailed all of the points that I would have tried to go to with better detail in your answer there. So that's great. We'll try to provide some that maybe are a little bit more outside the box, but we're evaluating I think it's important to remember we're evaluating a full season's defense against a team that's played 5 games. So if you had, let's just go back. Let's go back to last year. Last year we started off and the defense looked exactly the same. I seem to remember an article out there about how we were playing basically a bend not break defense. And then October came around and then we were a really, really good defense. And we were shutting down opponents and forcing turnovers and just everything started clicking faster. I would say that's probably what we're seeing here as well. The Ole Miss game seemed to be like a couple of breakdowns late, like the same type of stuff. You drop everybody back in coverage. What is it, like Plumsley or whatever? Plumlee.
It's one of those other Plumleys. Like there's more Plumleys in this world.
And he, sneaks out of the pocket, and it's just a really hard thing to game plan for when you're not expecting out of Carroll. So, and then if you go into this game, as you said, the biggest difference in this game was Jaden Daniels, and I tweeted this. Benjamin was the one that got all the accolades for having 100+ yards and 3 touchdowns. Benjamin was mediocre. Like he was 3.4 yards per carry. He was fine.
He wasn't breaking off like 20, 50, 30-yard runs.
Sitting behind an O-line and was getting 4 yards every play. Now, this will ruin one of my points, but whatever. So the biggest thing in this game was what you said. And I think if you look at the Cal defense, if you want to isolate one issue that they have, I wouldn't look at the DBs. I wouldn't look at the linebackers. I would look at the pass rush because we're having to take guys out of position or out of being able to play and drop back to have to send them to get extra pressure on the quarterback. We're not getting that push. And when Arizona State got beyond the 50, before the 50, we did pretty well. But when they got beyond the 50, it was easy churning on the ground, 4 yards. And the line was there before the back. Their O-line was there before the running back was. So it was not a matter of like just Benjamin being this really good talent. I don't mean that he's bad. Like he's great. He played great. Like I don't mean to completely just undermine
just
his
in the
entire
context of the
performance,
game.
but yeah, I just didn't see anything there where I was like, oh my gosh, the running back. By far more of my comments came about Jaden Daniels and was how poised he was for a true freshman, how sad I was inside that he didn't choose Cal. And on that drive alone, I think the biggest plays that happened when they had the ball in their own territory were the ones where he ended up leaking out. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think our standards might be a little too high.
The last time Cal, the extreme case, right? The last time Cal's DBs led the country in interceptions or was second in the country in interceptions. That was 2015. And we all know how that season panned out. Now that defense looked like the interception stat to me is like one of those where it's very just of the moment. Great. You had a bunch of interceptions, but it doesn't matter if you're bleeding points the rest of the way, which that defense definitely did. And some of these guys that are on this team right now and are seniors were on that team.
Underrated moment. Underrated moment in this game was, it's not a fun moment for Cal fans to go and relive, but we give up the ball and turnover on downs, and then Arizona State gets it and goes absolutely nowhere, and the defense shuts them down and give the ball back. They kick the field goal, and Cal gets the ball back with like 2:53 to play. At the time, you're like, oh, it's ball game. And then we get the ball back with more than enough time to go down the field and get 7 points. So they were stout when they could be, and then it just sort of seemed like when they were blitzing, and it just seemed like either Daniels got loose or what they would do is actually I got to credit my CEO, Clint, was the one that pointed this out, and he played football at Penn, and he was saying that every single time that we would send an extra guy, they would take the running back, and they'd have the running back fill the position that guy just left and drop back and just sit there as a target. And then Daniels would hit him, and then he would gain like 6 yards.
That's your safety valve.
And the one area is like, so what you said, we didn't wrap up that well. And I think, why are we not wrapping up that well? It's probably early. Maybe the coaches were like, oh, we're better at tackling now. Maybe we don't need to focus on as much. Maybe the quarterbacks don't need to know how to tackle this year instead of years past.
All right.
Yeah, so maybe, that was one of those things.
I mean, one of the things, too, is I'll burn one of my points here, is that not having, like, a true nose guard in the middle definitely hurts all the way through, because that's also one of the reasons we're going to have to send an extra guy. Because when you had a guy like Chris Palmer last year, or you have a guy like Aaron Maldonado or Siu, like, you have a guy who's big enough and hefty enough that is going to command double teams. Like, if you have a guy, if you're going to play like a true 3-4, you have to have a nose guard that can eat up the center and one of the guards. Because it's a numbers game, right? You want to be advantageous as much as possible in terms of numbers. You want to be able to use one, and they have to use 2 or 3 against that one. Because then it helps, all around. Not having that, I mean, definitely hurts our interior run defense. Like, when they're running up the middle between the tackles, like, Lord, when they're running power, like, between the tackles, sheesh, like, we can't stop them whatsoever.
Yep.
That coupled with, I think Koin Dang is going through a Division I learning curve.
Big time.
And
he's just a little late.
He's just a little late. And and sometimes wrong angles that makes him late.
Yeah.
And there are times where his athleticism and his size helps him mask some of those things. But there's a lot of times where he'll take the wrong angle and the running back will just kind of swerve around him.
Yep.
And he's already diving for the tackle, and it's just out of reach.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. That's a learning curve. But that we have to take those things in stride too. Like, we can't expect all JUCOs to come in and be like premier guys right away. Like, that's what we thought of Trevin Clark too. And it took him 4 games before we saw him finally start to make an impact, starting last week's Ole Miss game and into here as well. So, like, we got to grow with the growing pains, and you got to look at the whole picture as a whole. Like, it's weird to me if you're just looking at, like, the defense and you're expecting them to perform last year. Like, one of our star guys on defense is currently in the NFL. That is big shoes to fill from a JUCO guy that's just coming in and changing positions nonetheless. Tough. It's tough. All right, we got more questions. Let's see. Do you want future or about this game?
That's this game still.
Okay. How much responsibility do you think Baldwin deserves to bear, no pun intended, for being unable to adjust the offense for Modster to put him in better situations to succeed, more designed runs, rollouts, screens, etc., once it was evident he couldn't throw the ball?
All right, so I love this question except for the end. I just want to say, I mean, it's a good question, right? I think the entire idea of Modster being unable to throw the football is a fallacy, and I just want to put it out there. The guy can throw a football. He has good form. Please don't let 14 attempts be your judgment on whether or not he can throw. Do I think this game is entirely on Baldwin's shoulders? Like 65 to 70%. Yeah, I'd say so. I thought that the second half play calling was boring. It was conservative. It was playing into a narrative of us being afraid to put the ball in the air. It was not lending any confidence to the quarterback. I thought, exactly as the individual who wrote the question said, like, the lack of designed rollouts, our run play outside of except for that first drive of the second half where we just ran it down their throat. It was super. It just got really, really predictable.
Well, you also know we didn't pass a single time on that drive. The thing is, when I went back and rewatched it, one of those plays was actually a pass. It's that Devon Modster had a low snap, so he kind of bobbled it, and he couldn't throw anywhere, because it was already late anyway. So he picked it up and just ran. Yeah. And he made it into a gain of, I think, what was it, like 6 or 8 yards? Yeah. So that's why it ended up being all runs. So there was one pass.
That's good knowledge. That's really good knowledge. I think that's. I refute the idea that Devon Modster isn't a quarterback that's more than capable of succeeding in the Pac-12. I really think that he is. And then on top of it, I think that we did nothing to help. I loved. All right, whatever. This is my second point. So whatever. I have a bunch of stuff on Modster. So here we go.
Let's burn them.
I absolutely loved the interception and the touchdown in the end zone before the half. I loved it because I like that we went for it. If we don't go for those type of things, we are doing exactly what I didn't like about the North Texas game. Throw the ball when you have it in their territory like that in a game that's, is a little low scoring. I'd take the shot, right? Okay, so he puts it short, and he has the guy open if he puts it corner end zone, but he just doesn't.
Deeper.
Yeah, just a little deeper. But and, credit to Trace for being the first one to really point that out. But I mean, I just think that take the shot. That's the offense that I want. I don't want to be this turtle offense that just kicks field goals and then crawls into its shell and then says defense, come save us. I don't want to play that style of football. I want to have a functional offense with a quarterback that's unafraid to make a mistake, but also knows, makes that decision. Okay, I can't just throw all the time, right? I can't just continually make mistakes, but I have confidence that I'm not going to, be in trouble if I turn the ball over one time. And yeah, that play ended up being important, kind of, but if we kick a field goal there, we probably still lose the game anyways. So,
we threw the interception, but it didn't end up turning into points. And then
right.
We started off with the ball back to start the second half.
So to me, make that throw. I also wanted to take a look at his stat line because he's 5 for 14, but I think that's pretty misleading. He was 7 of those attempts came in the last 2 drives, I want to say.
Yeah.
So that to me is why are you not giving a quarterback the ability to get into rhythm? You already know. All right, we can go on a deeper level here, which is why you can either start to question things like, why is your backup quarterback so unbelievably not ready to play in a football game if they have to come in, particularly when your starting quarterback got injured the week before and had to come out of the game? That should have signaled a warning sign hey, maybe
just
we
him.
should have this other guy ready. And then secondarily, it's is the playbook too complicated? The O-line play was really bad. I thought the O-line was letting the ASU defensive line really dictate a lot of the throwing lanes, and then they were putting their hands up. And I mean, there was nothing easy for Modster in that game other than maybe a couple bad throws they had. One, I remember to the outside they left super short, and everybody in the stadium kind of went, oh my gosh, you literally heard that audibly. Mm-hmm. So all this to say, I'm not worried about Modster. I think he's going to be more than fine. Worst case scenario, again, we lose this week, we get a bye week, and we go to Oregon State, which should be a lot more fun to play offense against Oregon State's defense. But I am more concerned about our offensive coaching. I'm a little bit worried about why our backup was so unable to be successful, and I feel this is tough for me to swallow because earlier in the year I was talking about the play design being really good, and I thought the play calling was actually pretty strong for the first half, but then I think that this is an obvious kind of area of doubt now going after this game, but obviously don't want to have too big of a reaction. So yeah, I just think that there's this line that Wilcox used about the free throws, right, in the press conference. So we don't teach our guys to go up there, or we don't tell our guys to go up there and don't miss the free throw. That's not how we coach. But there's starting to be a pattern here of quarterbacks that are scared to throw the ball. We have Bowers, we have Garbers, and now we have a data point of Modster. And they all look the same. So now you can kind of look at it and say, okay, from an analyst perspective, I have consistencies here where I thought I had variables. And now I would go back and think about the coaching, whether it's at the top with Wilcox and where their faith lies, because Modster completely was bottled. They sent the signal of, we don't want you to turn the ball over, right? Did you not feel? I felt that. Did you feel that?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you run how many times to start the opening drive?
Right.
Like you
Not one play action? Like,
Yeah.
not a single one?
not even a quick slant, like just to get his arm like warmed up, like in the field, like how to get yourself ready.
Yeah, I do miss some of the air raid stuff where we had those, it was a lot more about just getting 2-3 yards on that first down. Like, get the ball out fast, get the ball out to the receiver, and then bring up 2nd and 7. Because then the offensive positions we're putting ourselves in now, particularly on one of the last 2 drives that we went 4 and out on, the one where we run the ball on 2nd down just for the sake of running, I was like, dude, then this is just running the ball for the sake of doing it. It doesn't make any sense. The defense was all over it.
It's also been
super
ineffective
unsuccessful
all game.
Yeah. So,
Or not all game, but like as soon as the second half started and that first drive went through and we basically ran it into the end zone, ASU was basically like, all right, you want to do that? Well, we're just gonna send everyone and stop your run.
Yeah.
Let's see if your backup quarterback can throw.
Yeah.
And then we were like, we're just gonna keep running and see if we can break through.
So I think if there's anything that we've been really positive on Wilcox, and I think for very good reason, but there is an underlying current here of sort of performance that I think stems from coaching that around turnovers, and especially because we know that that's one of those areas that the coaching staff really highlights that is leading to some form of yips anxiety that sort of showcases itself in the game. And whether or not they're doing it intentionally or if it's like a kind of like a subtext, it's definitely there. Because what we saw from Modster wasn't a starting quarterback out of basically a Pac-12 quarterback that had played for UCLA in a starting role. It was, he looked like a true freshman.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, too, like, I guess this is my side of that, is I don't know how much you're expecting a backup quarterback to come in that is a junior, right? So you don't have to dumb down the playbook like you would a true freshman quarterback. Like, if we had thrown Spencer Brash out there, like, you're dumbing down the menu of the game, you're dumbing down everything possible, and you're making it the easiest possible, like, game calling for him, right? We didn't need to do that. He's a junior. He's been through the system before. Like, he I'm sure by this point, like, he knows the playbook and he knows the things. But then at the same time, like, you throw him out there and your run game is pretty much nothing. Like, you're getting maybe 2 yards a run. And you're throwing him out there expecting him to just flamethrower, like, ignite himself and ignite this offense. Like, maybe. I mean, he did kind of that with his feet, right? But you can't expect, like, all backup quarterbacks to just come in and just light it up. And so, like, I think, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, he'll come good, in my opinion. And I've watched him in practice too. Like, he's not a bad quarterback. He's not bad at throwing. He's he's had probably better deep passes than Garbers did all of camp. It was a matter of Garbers being consistent and having a firmer grasp of the offense than it was about, like, ability, which Garbers had enough of too. But there's enough there to be like, this dude can definitely play football. But yeah, it's just one of those weird things where, like, you have to take the entire environment of what he was put into context as well. You can't just say, like, oh, he came in because the other quarterback, sucked or got injured, and they did the exact same thing as in the first half, and he was a lot worse. Like, it wasn't like that. The narrative, you can't push that narrative because it's definitely not what happened in the game. And
37 rushing attempts, 105 rushing yards, 2.8 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, I mean, yeah, I feel like we had fool's gold in the second half, first drive of the second half. It was like totally the worst thing that could have possibly happened for that coaching staff was to see if you just run the ball the whole time that you could win. And then we got the 3-point lead and we went turtle mode. It's the opposite of beast mode. You crawl into a turtle shell and you just put everything on your defense. And your defense we can't keep doing that. Like, yeah. We can't.
This game, towards the end of the game, reverted back to last year because, yeah, our defense is great, but you can't keep punting and then giving the ball up like on their 45 and giving up bad field position and expecting your defense to bail you out every single time.
Yeah.
That's not a healthy way of playing football. All right. This is another question that kind of leads from that. Is the general rustiness of our backup QB a system of our offensive system, i.e. the types of plays or access to the playbook as opposed to just numbers of reps? How do other schools like USC plug and play their second and third strings? Does that go beyond talent? All right, here's my take on this. First off, Modster was not eligible for basically the first 3 weeks of the season. What does that mean? We don't know because we're not allowed to watch practice during those 3 weeks. Did he practice? I'm sure he did. But was he a main factor of like getting first team reps or second team reps with the potential of playing as the backup? Probably not. That was probably Robbie Rowell and Spencer Brash's job. So he played all of fall camp, but all throughout fall camp, yeah, you kind of knew who the ones were on offense. But at the same time, this dude has just come in and he's learning through the playbook, right? And he has to get adjusted to all of his wide receivers and all the calls. And this isn't an excuse. It's just that's how it is when you're a transfer or a new guy. Like you have to learn everything from the ground up. Granted, there's some, crossover in styles of playbook and calls because he was also coached by Coach Tui. So, offensively, some similar principles, but the wording, the repertoire, like how some wide receivers like it in this spot, some wide receivers like it in this spot on, different types of routes and whatnot, all that. So all of that considered, do we know how much he practiced? I mean, because we know he was eligible for the Ole Miss game because he came in and played a snap. Do we know how much he practiced in that week? No. I mean, we didn't get to watch. But I'm sure he did. Of course he practiced because being not eligible doesn't mean you can't practice with the team. It's just that you're not able to play in the games.
Yeah.
So that being said, my understanding of how offensive coordinators run a offense is you have a playbook. Let's say it's like a dictionary. Okay. You game plan for an opponent and you pick out like the sets of plays that you want to run that game. You can't use the full playbook because that is a crazy amount of information your quarterback needs to have in their brain and to be able to like just do every 40 seconds. So, if you have a full dictionary, you realize that team is weak against B, like E, GH, you select it, and that's the menu that you have for that game. Does that menu change based upon the quarterback you have in? Probably, because every quarterback has a different skill set. So all in all, like where does this lean towards? Was it an inability to change that menu because you had already preset it for this game, and then Modster comes in and you're not confident that he's going to be able to execute that menu that you had planned, so you divert back into the basic of whatever you had, set up? Or is it that, and this is super naive, and I highly, highly doubt that the coaches are thinking this way, but you're just thinking Chase has played so well last game, like he's going to be our starting quarterback, and you're not expecting him to get injured, of course. I mean, what coach is expecting injury, right? But you're just not expecting that type of injury, and he goes out, and, you go to your backup quarterback. So, how much was it, just bleed off from the Ole Miss game and you kind of feel more confident with your guy? And how much was it also Modster? Because as Modster, you were sitting on the sideline watching Chase light up Ole Miss. I don't think as Modster, barring injury, you're expecting to play at all. So maybe it was a preparation thing. Maybe it just wasn't. It's he's playing great. I'm not basically going to be able to play unless he gets injured. But of course, no one's ever prepping to get injured.
Yeah.
So
could totally be that.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many variables, and there's not a lot of answers here that is for certain.
I do think I love the question because I was
Yeah.
saying the same thing after the game.
Yeah.
I think it's just a great question because, why is USC able to just plug and play talent and get results out of it? Sometimes it's not good. Fink wasn't good this week, but I think that I do not understand that, and I do think that if we had a better understanding of that, we might be at a higher pay grade.
Yeah.
But that is the question that's sort of in my mind. Is it a playbook thing? People say that like Kyle Shanahan's playbook is so complicated that it takes 2 years to learn it. So his teams will really only reach their true potential in their third year, things like that. I don't know. Maybe Baldwin's playbook is just super complicated and hard to learn. I have a feeling it's probably more of what you're saying. Like, I'm staring at a guy who's coming into his own. The coaches really believe in him. He's beat me out in camp. I wasn't eligible for the first 3 weeks, so I wasn't getting reps. And, I finally got my first, maybe second team reps for Ole Miss. And then now I'm in the game. I just took my first deep shot, and it got picked off. Oh, and by the way, the coaches aren't going to call me a throwing play until like 4 minutes left in the game when the entire defense thinks I'm going to pass. It just goes back to what we said before, where it's like, man, to me, the coaches, the play calling failed the individual. It wasn't the player failing the coach. I just sort of felt like, and even in the last drive, like Dancy dropped one right over the middle that, we had 2nd and 4. Dancy drops that. That was going to be like a pretty manageable third down.
I think Jeremiah drops one too, right?
And
Granted,
Jeremiah was a little behind him. Totally catchable football.
Yeah.
Totally
Hands were on
catchable football. Yeah, should have got it. So we never really got to see, in my mind, the true capabilities. Yes, he was wild on a couple of throws. They're underthrown. That is what you would expect from a backup quarterback. Some of those things are to be expected.
Here's like another fun one. This is just, I think, a yes or no question. Is it time to switch to the triple option?
Yes and yes. Next question.
Is Garber's potential season-ending injury the second most devastating injury for the program over the last 20 years? Number one being Nate Longshore. So here's the caveat with
20 years?
Here's the caveat with this. We have no idea whether Garbers is out for the year. With our sports knowledge combined,
I'm pretty sure he's out for the year.
It looks like he is. Because the way you have your arm slinged up like that usually means one of two things. Mm-hmm. Usually means it's a broken collarbone, or like a separated shoulder, or something with your shoulder. Like the way they had it slinged up.
So separated shoulder, you can dangle it.
Yeah.
A collarbone, you cannot dangle it because it hurts too bad.
Yeah.
So that's why you have your arm on your stomach.
Yeah.
Check the film, and you'll see the way Garber's holding his arm.
Yeah, and then after, when he's on the sidelines, he has like a hoodie on. He has his left arm out, but his right arm is like under the hoodie, and his arm's not coming out of the arm sleeve. Yep. Clearly means they have it bundled up like around his body. So, I mean, we'll find out on Monday for sure with the press availability, depending on when you're listening to this. But yeah, so that's the caveat with this. But going back to the question, is this the most devastating injury? I mean, for me, you can't gauge that until after the season.
Dude, I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't think so. I think Cameron Good's injury from last year was more devastating.
Yeah.
Like, think about that defense and where it went and
what it could have been with Cam Good.
Yeah, like, I mean, we can apply a retrospective lens to like any season, and we can't apply it to this. So you're right. Like, the fairest thing would be revisiting this at the end of the year, and then maybe judging that gap of, okay, this is where we got. How much further could we have gotten should Garbers have been, not go down with that type of injury? But I'm like, I mean, my head goes to, I'm like, what if Marshawn had 2 healthy ankles? Like, he was running on 2 sprained ankles for most of his time at Cal.
What if Javid never got concussed?
Right. That way more devastating. That Javid Best injury, and I've said this story. Dude, that Javid Best injury was the most devastating injury I've ever witnessed in my entire life.
I literally thought a person died on the field.
Yeah, well, they did. I mean, they did.
Wow.
Like, I was on the 10 with the team, and the play happened directly in front of me. I'm standing right next to his coach, and I have the entire team on my right no line. So Javid goes up in the air, falls back, seizes in front of everyone. So that was insane.
Like convulses.
Yeah, convulses. And then nobody talked, and the entire team literally thought they had seen somebody die. I mean, it was everybody was so off kilter, was so out of it. There's no way we were going to win that game. Period. It was lost. So that's a perfect example of one that I think was like far more devastating. I don't think I'm not even changing season expectations over here. It just sucks because you started to see the evolution of a guy that we've been waiting to see, and it was happening, and now it's not, Anyone else? Like, who else? What other injuries?
I don't know. I mean, the one I can think of off the top of my head is the Nate Longshore one, just because of how well he was playing up until getting his ankle tweaked in the Oregon game. And then he was just never the same guy for the rest of the year. I mean, of course, Kevin Riley took over like about halfway through it. But, man, I mean, do you remember like that first half of that 07 season, like how well he was throwing the ball around with that wide receiver crew, which in my mind still is the best wide receiver core Cal has ever had, even considering the 2015 class. I think that 07 group, like we ran numbers over guys with just our starting three. Just our starting three.
Yeah, the Longshore one was pretty tough. I think it was eased by the fact that everybody thought Kevin Riley was the heir apparent. We just had Rodgers, and everyone was looking for the next Rodgers, and Riley was sort of there, so there was like some form of optimism. And Longshore was always kind of underwhelming in a weird way.
Yeah,
he was good, he just wasn't
great.
Yeah, and it's like that quarterback hangover from when you have great and you go to good, and you're like, I kind of want great again.
Yeah.
But it's a great question. I do think like there's probably a handful of injuries that if we did a deeper dive into, you could find some that would be a little bit more impactful.
I'd be interested to getting maybe like one of those like Cal historian dudes on here to talk about this after the season's over. And, in retrospect, like what could have been. Is this one of the greatest seasons of what could have been Cal season? But that also depends on what Modster does. Like if Garbers is out for the rest of the year, what Modster does starting next week. Like if he there's two ways this goes. Like either he like exceeds what Garbers was doing and decides to start torching everyone. And then the other side of this is that he reverts, like, not to the turnover-prone quarterbacks we had last year, but just that mediocre, like, maybe one touchdown a game or, like, with 0 interceptions, or maybe the 1-1 or 2 touchdowns to 1 interception games with, like, 190 yards or 200 yards or so. Like, that doesn't really push the envelope anywhere, but it's just, like, a solid, mediocre college quarterback.
Yeah. And if we don't do that, then I'm going to start firing up the Jim Mora Jr. offensive coordinator train.
Adams was really pushing for Zach Hill. We talked to him the other day. So, yeah, there's a bunch. There's a bunch here. That's most of the questions. Before we kind of close, were there any other ASU game points that you wanted to talk about? Because I still have a few remaining here, and I can go first if you don't have any. I talked about most of it. Like I talked about Maldonado, I talked about the DBs and how they played and what I think about how they play.
All right, yeah, I'll go ASU stuff real fast.
All right.
Okay, so two things in my mind in regards to how did we lose? What do you think they are? I have two things that I think you could boil it. If you boil it down to two things, I think these are the two.
Can I say one of my points to the opposite of that? One of the things that didn't get us the win, but kept us afloat was, this is my sentence: the defense did enough to put us in a position to win, but couldn't close out to get us the win.
Yeah,
that was one of my points.
I was gonna say some similar to that too. I mean, how far have we changed to where like 24 points is like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with the defense? do we remember when we used to give up 60 points a game? It's just a really fun kind of like revisit.
Does no one remember that Washington State game? Like, granted,
Yeah,
like
like-
UCLA Washington State had a crazy game last week. Do you not remember ours against Washington? We got a special teams coordinator fired.
I thought that the UCLA Washington State game was preseason college basketball. I was like, wow, I had no idea that college basketball was back.
Hey, that's exactly what my dad said. He saw the score on his phone, and when I was FaceTiming with him, he's like, "Hey, did college basketball season start?" And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Because the UCLA Washington State game." I was like, "No, that's a football game. That's a real football game."
Joke. All right, so do you want to guess? There's two things that I think led to ASU winning the football game. What do you think those two things are?
Our inability to get first downs. Something along those lines.
Nope, but good point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all I can think of is the offense. Like, I can't think of any for the defense. But it's all along those lines. Like, being unable to run the ball.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you're there. ASU offensive line versus our defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Literally just getting beat over and over again from the line of scrimmage. And Jane Daniels.
Yep.
That's it. Those are the two.
We just couldn't contain.
He was crushing us. And at some point, we all should tip your cap to a true freshman that could play that well. He looked so good. I was so pissed. I was like, dude, why didn't you come to Cal?
The thing was with Jaden Daniels and how well he played too, wasn't that it was RPOs where he pulled and he ran. It was on scramble drills.
Yeah.
Like that's what killed us. And we had guys spy. Like, I tweeted this out. When I was watching the game, I distinctly remember we had Evan Weaver as a spy on certain plays. We had Coin Dang as spy on certain plays. We had Cam Good spy on a couple plays. Like, we had multiple guys spy, but this comes back to the whole tackling thing. We would spy correctly, and then like Weaver had that perfect one. You and I both remember this, where he runs into Beckett. He loses his footing because his legs get cut out from under him because his knees basically hit Beckett's butt. And he hits the floor. Otherwise, that's a wrap up in the backfield, and they have to punt.
Yeah. No, that was a huge play in the game. Happened on like 2 in that drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was Daniels. I love the way he drops back and goes through his progressions. He has a ton of confidence in his offensive line. We weren't getting any pressure. And anytime we send somebody, they leak out a running back and they throw him. Or he'd roll out of the pocket and he would get loose and he'd beat our spies. And so at that point, like, tip your cap. He played super well.
Their wide receivers also played super well, and I wanna point that out because their offense coordinator and their wide receiver coach is none other than former Cal wide receiver coach Rob Likens.
Yeah.
And if you have the time, please go back and watch Rob Likens' press conference leading up to the Cal game. So it was from last week, and he gives I think 10 minutes of a press conference, but he gives a coaching lesson on restacking and like wide receiver play. And it's absolutely mind-blowing. I learned so much within those 5 minutes that he was talking about that. But he has a cool story about like his decision to leave Cal to go to Kansas. And my retelling of it won't do it justice. Like, you have to see the emotion in his eyes and what he talks about, and you know how much he hated like leaving those young wide receivers at the time. So if you have the time, please go and watch it. The dude's great. If we have to change offense coordinators, that's one of the guys I would want to call.
He's got to be pretty high on the list.
You got another one?
So, yeah, let's talk about the fans and the atmosphere.
Oh boy.
Is this painful for you?
This is painful. This is actually painful for me.
Why?
Because of one, the marketing push. And I know some of those guys that are on the marketing team at Cal, and I've talked to them about what could we possibly do to get more fans to come out to games. And it kills me. It kills me because of all the work that they did and all of the little Twitter videos of Evan Weaver on the bench, like telling guys to come out. Jalen Hawkins on the Twitter account, saying we need you all out here. And the fans showed up. They didn't show up in full force, okay? The student section, absolutely great. There was a little pocket at the top that was empty, but overall, packed student section, kept the sound going. I didn't see what the crowd was like underneath us because we're in the press box, but I've heard that it was pretty packed along. Of course, the end zones.
It always is, though.
Yeah, the end zones not usually.
Right.
But then they also ran out, or they sold out of the $15 ticket deal for the game. 47,000 fans. I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, I was told somewhere around 45, and that was before the ASU $15 ticket sale. So it sucks because these people that are on the fringe and guys that people haven't, or the people that haven't come to Cal games in years, finally got this fire ignited with them, with the average fan being drawn to the rankings, right? And that's a gauge of how good your team is. The number 15 sign on a Friday night hosting a Pac-12 team, and the hype was real. The definite hype was real around the stadium with all the people there. And then this team loses in the fashion that they did. If it was let's say it was one of those sunny nights, 60 to 59 losses, I guarantee you there would have been people back in a couple weeks. But just how the offense as a whole flamed out towards the end, and we had a lead, it's gonna kill a lot of those wavering fans from coming back to a Cal game, just because it's we've been there before. The whole woe is me thing we were talking about being a Cal fan, that you've experienced this type of letdown loss. We were great and we're on a roll, and of course we can't keep it going. And it just sucks because now those fans aren't going to come back, and now you're going to have revert back to the crowd that was at North Texas, that type of crowd. And it stinks. It sucks for those guys because they deserve so much better in terms of a home field advantage. But at the same time, I understand those fans' feelings too. As a fan, you come, you're all ignited, and then you get a letdown game that loses, and that was your first game of the year. Would you want to brave all the stuff and come back?
All right, so here's mine.
Please,
since you're on the downside,
yeah,
I'll be on the upside.
Okay. Well, don't get me wrong. I'm on the upside of what the turnout was. It's just how it turned out.
You guys are so down about this, and I'm not there. One, we need more than 47K. I hate to say it. I know it's this day and age where nobody goes to sporting events anymore, and attendance is this hard thing to figure out. I get it. I can't figure it out, but I do think we were hurt by it being on a Friday big time. Mainly because we miss the high school audience. You miss high school football. So all of those coaches, kids,
players, teams,
parents, they're all busy because that's when Friday Night Lights, that's high school. Mm-hmm. So we miss out on that audience, and that is a target audience. If you are Cal marketing office, that's who you want coming out to the games. Not only for recruiting, but just that's a great part of your fan base because they're super close to the sport. They understand it at a deeper level than your casual fan.
Well, not only that, those guys are the ones that grow up to be Cal fans, in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally. Exactly that. I do not think that this experience is one that people will walk away from and be I wouldn't want to do that again. I really don't. It was a competitive game. It was fun. Cal took a lead late. They were in the lead till 8 minutes left, and they happened to lose. Everybody that I brought to this game that I got to come out that were more casual fans also they would love to come to another game. So I don't think that I understand why it would have been great to deliver a win for that audience. I don't think that it will hurt our attendance going forward, depending on game time, because we keep getting 7:30 starts. There's nothing we can do. 7:30 starts suck for families. They can't bring kids out. It's a totally different story.
But to be fair, that was our first 7:30 game of the season.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But if we keep getting 7:30 slots, so Oregon State's the next home game.
There's no time for that one yet, I don't believe. Oregon's at 5.
I think it's going to be a little hard to look at Oregon State as bringing that out, but I do think, Oregon State will travel better than ASU traveled to this game. So the stadium might end up being more full than we expect. And then you're looking at Washington State and SC.
Washington State always shows up.
And SC
always
shows up with boatloads of fans. Yeah. So I think, the student section has been good. I think the only time when it really lacked a little bit was North Texas, and I think people got spooked, but I think we'll be fine. I think attendance will be great. The campus vibe was great. After parties were going on. I wanted to check one out. Rob said no.
There was a frat party going on in the back, like backyard parking lot of
I just wanted to see what it was like.
We saw it through the corner. Like, we saw the lights and we saw the music.
It looked fun.
You looked at me like, you want to go in? And I was like, like, you really want to do that right now?
Sometimes you just gotta relive it, you know? So anyways, I'm not concerned about attendance. I think it was fun. I think it was a good way to spend a Friday night. And I know it was like you could hear that one audible groan, but I think it's a different product. It's fun. It's a good vibe. It's college football. It's not the NFL. It's local. There's no other local team that's good. Stanford's trash. Like, it's, it's just like
the Raiders are leaving.
Yeah, NFL's kind of wavering a little bit in popularity. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. My last one. I only have one more because we talked about the rest. I mean, my other 2 points that I had left were tackling struggles continue, which we talked about, and Chase Garbers, and if he's unable to go for the rest of the year, is the question that will always be asked for the rest of the season. Like the what if.
That was yours?
I mean, that was one of them. But my last one is, because we did kind of talk about it with the whole what happens. But my last one, this is the loss we can afford. And you kind of talked about that point when we were going on the season, but this is definitely the one that we can afford. Because we were expecting to go 4-1 in the first 5 games. It just sucks because we went 4-0 and then we lost to ASU. That's why it feels sucky. But if we were 4-1 going into the Oregon game, and let's say we had lost to Washington, right? Would anyone be this upset? No. No one would be. All in all, it's the same number. If anything, we have a win on if we ever need to go in a tiebreaker against Washington, we hold that tiebreaker now.
Big time. It's a much bigger win. Yeah, if you traded him. I think people are generally upset because of the Garber stuff.
Yeah.
So I can understand that, and I just think like we're getting more of a reaction out of this loss, which isn't actually that big of a loss. And also like we have to check our own expectations again. Like,
yep.
I just wasn't with the we're going to be national contenders this year. It just was not the progression that I expected this program to make. Like, let's get a Miller Moss in at quarterback, right? Or Moss Miller. Sorry. Let's get him in at quarterback. Let's get these guys in that are these big time recruits. And then we can start to get those expectations. We're not recruiting at that level yet. We haven't brought in anyone on the offense that's really been that dynamic of a recruit where we're like, Nico has been that. That's kind of it.
Will Craig. But like
Will Craig's amazing, and like his injury has been massive.
Yeah.
I'd argue his injury is just as big as Garber's. Like losing Will Craig for the year has been devastating to our offensive line, which looked good early. But like that's it. I mean, we need to get 4-star receivers. We need to get 4-star quarterbacks. We need to get 4-star running backs. We need to get 4 or 5-star, outside linebacker DN recruits. We need to be able to get if that's where the expectations are going, let's get to the next level in recruiting first, and then let's go there. But for now, can we compete for the Pac-12 championship? Absolutely, for sure. I think we can do the Utah model. We can be highly competitive, and that can spill into sort of bigger recruits, and maybe you get a recruiter like Tosh that starts to develop. Like people forget, like Tedford expectations were kind of 8-4, 9-3 type deal, and then Tosh started recruiting these guys that were like 5 stars, and we were like, wow, where could this program then go? And then Tosh left for a boat in Washington, and then decided that the rain sucks and went to Alabama. Yeah. But to me, we're so far from, and that's the problem. I think we were ranked like way too high.
No, yeah, we were way overranked, and that was basically because we had beaten a Washington team and we were undefeated.
Yeah.
This early in the season, if you're undefeated, if you're like 4-0, 5-0, you're going to be ranked that high regardless of how close those wins were and how unsustainable that type of winning is. Because there's not going to be a lot of teams with, the 1 or 2 losses. My last thing on that would be, if you're a fan and you're listening to this and you live in the Bay Area, you need to be coming out to games. Because all in all, we got a lot of questions about recruiting. And yes, we had a boat ton of really good recruits at this game, namely 2021 quarterback Miller Moss, 4-star tight end for 2021 Jermaine Terry. Like we had some really good guys at this, and you might think that they care about the wins or losses. They don't. They really don't. Because what they're caring about is this well, first of all, it's the football side of this. Like, where do I fit in the system? Like, are they going to develop me well? That's a whole nother question. But when they come to an official visit or an unofficial and they see the game and it's packed out, like, you want to play in those environments. And I'll be totally honest. Like, if I was a top tier football recruit, regardless of all the other things that football programs can give me, like if I walk into the big house or if I walk into the horseshoe at Ohio State, and that's the first type of like environment you experience, like everyone here is cheering for all of us, like everyone's in attendance, win or lose, like that sends shivers through your spine. And those are the type of big elevated moments you want to play in as you advance in your football career or any professional career for that matter. So the more you come out, the more these guys are going to be drawn. If they come out and they see like 3,000 fans in the seats with how big our stadium is, like, why would you want to play here? Like, despite all the good academic stuff, we praise that stuff all the time. But as an athlete, like, it's like a high school gym. Like, why would you want to be playing your Division I college football like in front of just a handful of people? So,
and so yeah, to that, like, that's exactly it. I think is that atmosphere matters a lot. And I mean, I think all the locker room upgrades, like it's really good time for us to recruit really well and start to win. I mean, you think about UCLA attendance and where UCLA is at. You look at Stanford attendance and what their stadium vibes kind of feel like and where they're at. This is a great year to pitch Cal. And so, yeah, I mean, how many tickets did I get offered this game? 6. And so if you need tickets, like, please reach out to the podcast. And if anything, like, I always have an athlete single ticket available. At most games because I'm up in the press box, I have an athlete. Well, I probably shouldn't advertise this.
Yeah.
There may or may not be means for me to get a ticket that I can get. And then I also get offered tickets a lot. I have season tickets for my family, and we sometimes get used, sometimes don't. So if there's like, I usually try to push them out to friends because I'm trying to get people to come to the games.
Yep. And
I think it's on all of us collectively to make sure that the attendance stays up. And the product is good. We know the product is fun to watch, and they're going to be competitive in every game. And it's not going to. The worst was when I took my friends to the Ohio State Cal game when we got just blown out of the stadium. They're like,
Lord.
"Why are you making me come to these games?" Now they come, they're like, "Oh, that was fun. It was a good time."
I mean, my last point is the 4-year trajectory for most new coaches in college football or any college sport. Year 1, you lose big. Year 2, you lose small. Year 3, you win small. Year 4, you win big. Like, that's the trajectory you want. We are exactly on that path. Exactly on that path. We're winning small. And is that unsustainable? Sure, in certain games. But that still means we're winning. Need to be there to help it out. Help it out. And do it in our stead, because we can't cheer.
Yeah, exactly. Cheer doubly hard because we're not allowed to cheer, especially when we're number 15. So know that we're like cheering inside and trying to cheers gummy bears, but there's only so many gummy bears that Berkeley Bowl sells.
And that pretty much wraps it up for us here on the Golden Blocks podcast. This was a fun one. You can find me at Rob11HWNG and also Andy at
Andy J Beast Mode.
You can find our podcast Twitter at CGB Bearcast. If you're listening to this, you probably found us somewhere. But for other people, we are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and SoundCloud. So please go and do all the things that you do on the internets and apps to listen to us. But I think that's it. Oregon.
Did we get a review?
We have not.
I was told that we had a review.
If you get a review, check the reviews. Was there any reviews? I guess you can't check it on the website or on the app. I guess you got to go to the website. We'll do it. We'll do it.
There's a rumor on the street that there's a review.
Okay, we'll read it next week. But in the meantime, Oregon, 5:00. I believe it's on Fox.
I'll be in the stands.
He will be in the stands.
If you want to say hi, the best bet is like 4:00 before the game. Otherwise, I'm fully unavailable. But
fully inebriated.
Yeah, like fully like someone in survival mode with a bachelor party of like 19 Ducks fans and then me as the lone Cal fan.
That's
but-
probably easy to spot.
Oh, yes, it is. Because they bought group seats, and it's in the Oregon section. It's going to be all Oregon fans, and then me in my jersey.
There you go. You'll be able to spot him. I think I'll be able to spot you from on TV.
You'll see me cheering when we win. You'll see me cheering.
All right. And as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.